I know it's technically a nonpartisan vote. Do you identify as a Democrat or a Republican?
I'm a registered Republican, but I think that when it comes to this race, you have to look at it from city issues. I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of people in our city government make, is that they're tying in national politics to the issues that really pertain to our city.
What's the first thing you would do if you were elected?
First thing would be pray a lot and pray for a lot of wisdom and guidance. But first things that we would address is the three issues that we're running on, which is money management, crime, and infrastructure, and putting practical policies in place to be able to improve those in our city.
Back up to a little bit of background about yourself. I mean, it's well known your half brother is J.D. Vance, who's now vice president, was a state senator, U.S. senator. Just so I have it accurately, I don't want to get it from you. Is he your half brother on your mother's side or your father's side?
On my father's side.
On your father's side.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I read Hillbilly Elegy and a movie, so I.
Well, it's good you read the book. A lot of people just watched the movie. I was like, there's a lot better details in the book.
Because I kind of had to.
Yeah.
Just to know the background.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were with the Bowman. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So,
guess there's some napkins right behind there.
Yeah. Go ahead and do that. That was silly. Thank you. How much do you think having him as your half brother helps you or hinders you in this election?
Well, I think initially, when we made the choice, we knew without a doubt that that was going to be the headlines for everything, was that J.D. Vance's brother was going to run for mayor. We were putting the emphasis on this as a race for Cincinnati, and we're addressing city issues. I think that initially, the biggest benefit to it is that it's helping bring exposure to this race, and it's helping to allow the public to see, more of the public to see this race than would normally see it. And when you look at these previous elections, the last mayoral election, I believe that was reported by the Inquirer that only 26% of registered voters actually showed up. And so if anything, I would hope that this race brings out more of a participation of every registered voter.
Now you have the coffee shop here, obviously. Do you, I guess you and your wife own and run it, and is it an offshoot of your ministry, or how does it work?
So it's a separate entity of the church. I'm a co-owner of it with my business partner, who started off in Tampa, Florida as a roastery. We're the first brick and mortar shop of it. I knew that the type of coffee and the quality of it needed to be in Cincinnati, but also we believe in the West End, and so that's why we started the shop in this area.
Do you live in the West End yourself?
No, so when we first started the church, we lived off 4th Street downtown. Currently we live in College Hill. When we found out that we were pregnant with our third child, our daughter, we were in the market for a house, and that's what worked out with us there. We continue to get the itch to move back downtown because we love the energy of downtown, but that's worked out great for us in College Hill right now.
Currently you have 3 kids. What are their ages?
So right now we have 3, 5, and 7. And then our 4th one is due at the end of June.
Let's dive into a little bit of the 3 issues. I'm sorry, before I ask that, how long have you been married?
We just celebrated 10 years last March.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, money management, infrastructure, crime. Let's start with crime. Obviously, youth violence, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
I mean, they just announced they're having to turn the banks only into an adult only after certain times. What would you do to solve it?
Well, I think that there's a lot of issues that go into that, a lot of decisions that we have to make. I think first and foremost, you have to support the Cincinnati Police Department. You have to put an emphasis on that relationship between city government and CPD needs to be good. There needs to be actions that actually support that rather than make the CPD feel like that they're a separate entity of the city government.
Can I pause you? I forgot to ask you. Can you really quick go turn the music off?
Yeah, we got it right here.
Is it not picking up? Okay, here, at least just turn it down.
Yeah.
I just want to, how glitchy they get about rights. So,
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay, cool. Just in case.
No, you're okay.
By supporting and not supporting, what do you mean by that? I mean,
I think overall it's a culture thing. I think that, right now when we look at the CPD and we look at their the issues of having the ARC program or having the 311, we can see that as separate from CPD, but a lot of these decisions that have been made have not been by actually talking with the CPD officers or the authorities to try to see what their input is. And I think that creates a disconnect between the city government and CPD in general.
Do you feel like the city government is almost, or the city council is almost second guessing the police department?
I don't think they second guess. I just don't think that they actually value the opinion of CPD. In the same way that we just saw with Hyde Park, how that vote clearly shows that they don't value the opinion of the community and the leaders of the community. So in the same way, there's a lot of decisions that's been made that haven't valued the input of CPD officers.
Any other bullet points you'd like to go over in terms of tackling crime and or youth violence?
Yeah, I think that it's the issue of youth violence. There's a lot of different causes of it, and we have to put an emphasis on the community and CPD involved in the community, whether it be with businesses, whether it be with community events that show that they're there to protect and to serve, that they are not our enemy, that they are our friends when it comes to that. I believe that we need to look into a possible youth curfew. When it comes to 18 and over. We're seeing that at the banks with a 21 and over emphasis, but we need to bring CPD on board with that and allow them not tie their hands when it comes to these laws, but actually allow them to do their job. And so we need to look at maybe youth curfews, but then also you need to emphasize the importance of family in these communities as well.
Yeah, you open up a whole can of worms with the youth curfew.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you need that? You obviously need the police on board, and how do you enforce it?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're going to have more cops on the street to be looking out for that, right?
Not necessarily more cops. It's just allowing them to do the job when it comes to enforcing that. A lot of times there are directives when it comes to the CPD officers is telling them what not to do instead of allowing them to do things. Like for instance, the non-pursuit laws that happen with traffic violations. When it comes to them telling them to not enforce laws on dates like 420 or during certain protests that are going on. We need to allow the Cincinnati Police Department to do their job. And when you look at the officers of CPD and when you talk to them, which I talk to them on a regular basis, they have such a heart for the community. They have such a heart for the residents of this community. They want to protect and serve.
Money management. What do you think is not correct now, and what would you do to fix it?
I think the biggest thing has to be priorities. No budget is perfect. You can't look at any budget and say, well, that's the perfect budget, that's the imperfect budget. But I think that what makes a budget work is your priorities and your principles. And so the priorities have to be on infrastructure. The priorities have to be on fixing our roads. The priorities have to be like what we saw with this winter. There was a week where customers couldn't come into my business because of the snowplow removal. And so these are things to where you can state all you want that we're in a deficit, but there is revenue coming into the city. And when you put priorities for infrastructure, for roads, and for certain things when it comes to crime and all that stuff, then all of a sudden the priorities can be reflected in that budget and you'll be able to see it. We have to be proactive, not reactive when it comes to our policies. We can't just react to the snow removal being terrible. We can't just react to the potholes. We need to be proactive in preventing these issues, and that starts with our money management.
You said infrastructure. Obviously, you're talking about roads and things like that. I mean, do you see a different use for? I mean, the city is, I keep saying we, I don't actually live in the city, but the city is in line to get tens of millions a year to help with that from the train sale. Do you see a different use for that, or do you see?
I don't see a different use for that, but based on what I've seen, I don't trust the current administration or the current policies that we've seen over the last 4 years to basically make good on those promises. And so, yeah, we're going to see an influx of the railroad sale, which we can talk all day about how that wasn't a good deal to begin with. But hey, it's done, it's over with. But when these first influx of payments come in, we can't just sit there and trust that, oh, based on the last 4 years, that they're going to actually do with it what they were promised to do with it. The terms of the condition are for existing infrastructure, right? Well, they can actually dictate what that is. They might put that toward expanding a streetcar. They might put that toward expanding certain things rather than just fixing our roads like what the people want.
Short-term, more near news in the headlines.
Yeah, there's a customer coming in. No, go ahead. Yeah, I already know his order. He's a regular anyway.
Why don't you go ahead and pause?
Yeah.
We'll go ahead
Sounds
and do
good.
your
Good.
thing.
Okay.
Before we pick up on the policy stuff, what's the name of your church?
Church is called the River Church Cincinnati.
How long have you been kind of
We started in November of 2020.
right in the pandemic?
Yep, right in the middle.
Non-denominational?
Yeah, I say that, but non-denominational is becoming a denomination itself, kind of. But yeah,
Right.
I basically tell people, yeah, non-denominational, evangelical, Bible-based.
Okay. And what's the address?
Right now, it's 503 Clark Street.
We might go get a shot of the outside or something.
gotcha,
just to
yeah.
show you. And before I also get started, I have been having a devil of a time trying to get in touch with Brian Frank.
Okay.
Do you have his number?
No, sir.
Okay, figured I'd ask.
Yeah. Is it on his website?
What's that?
Is it on his website?
No, it's not. I'm friends with him on Facebook, but he's not responding.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
'cause I want to be fair, I want to get everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go. Okay, we talked about infrastructure. We talked about the crime and money management. Talk about the infrastructure a little bit more. Are you saying you want to devote more money into infrastructure? Are you saying money that's already being spent is being spent improperly? What do you want to do to improve it?
Well, let me ask, do you drive around the city?
Yes,
Do you think that it's been done properly?
not my place to say.
I gotcha. Yeah, well, if you talk to anybody on the streets, doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat, they're tired of the potholes. They're tired of how the streets are. And so no matter what is being done, which, we're looking extensively into the budget committees and into how things are prioritized, you can't just sit there and say, I'm going to devote more money to it. The money obviously has to come from somewhere. That's what you have to do when you look at budgets overall, is prioritize. And from what I've seen over the last 4 years, what's important to the citizens as far as their roads being maintained properly, it's not prioritized.
So you grew up outside of Cincinnati?
Yeah, we were born in Hamilton, Ohio.
Right. So what brought you to the city? Why did you locate here? Why did you and your wife decide to?
Well,
you said you were on 4th Street for a while, and then,
Yeah.
Why Cincinnati?
Well, when we were younger, we were always coming downtown for whether it be ball games, concerts, restaurants, whatever that might be. I always felt like this was my home. I always felt like the city of Cincinnati, not just on the outskirts, but in the downtown area, that there was just something that always resonated with me here. And my dad was a custom home builder, and so there was a couple times where we went back and forth between Ohio and Florida. When I went to go study ministry after I graduated from Miami of Ohio, I was in Tampa for about 9 years. That's where I met my wife. We worked for a ministry there. And then when 2020 happened, my wife, I looked at her when we first started dating and I said, this is where I want to raise my family, is in the city of Cincinnati. And all she had to do was visit a couple times and she fell in love with the city as well. And so
Where's she from?
she's from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've got an OSU and we've got a better OSU. But whenever she came and visited when we were first dating, she fell in love with the city just as much as me, and we just knew like this is where we wanted to settle down and start our family.
What'd you study at Miami?
Business administration and economics.
That's a kind of a stretch to go from that to
Pastor.
yeah. So what called you to being a pastor?
Well, so what I find is that the Bible says that without a vision, people perish. It's very important for people to have a purpose and a vision for their life. What I found is that a lot of people, when they're first starting out in their careers, they're chasing a position, they're chasing a career, they're chasing a lifestyle, whether it be being married, having kids. But I kind of knew that whenever I was going into business, or at least planning on going into business after Miami of Ohio, that there was no purpose behind it. And so, I had, encounter with God to where I just knew that I wanted to pursue whatever God had for my life and have it be a greater purpose. And so that's what led me to study ministry. And so in 2020, that's what led us to start the church. It wasn't necessarily that I always felt called to be a pastor, always felt called to have a coffee shop. It's more so we've always had a heart to impact people of Cincinnati and impact people in a positive way. And so the church was the first step toward that. 2 years later, we knew that economically and in business that we could make an impact in this community in this way. And then 2 years later, we started realizing that in the governmental realm, this could be an area that we could impact people's lives as well. So it was always that central compass in our hearts of knowing that it's all about helping people.
You said that you need to make priorities. Is there for police, fighting crime, improving the infrastructure? What would you cut? I mean, there's only so many resources. So what do you think money's being spent on now that shouldn't be spent on?
Well, I think that their opinion about what existing infrastructure is, or their mindset of how to structure these cities, like what we just saw with Hyde Park, what we're seeing with connected communities, there's a lot of resources going into these efforts to be able to make certain parts of our city all blend together with high density and affordable housing. And these are things to where I feel like in a lot of these communities, it just doesn't work. And behind the scenes, it doesn't really seem like it's working for the best of the opinions of the community. And I think that your priority, number one, has to be the voice of the people. And so that's what we saw with Hyde Park. That's what we're seeing in a lot of these communities. And a lot of the resources, a lot of the budgets are going toward this, about these, kind of high profile agendas or high profile cases of whether it be with, going to try to attract Sundance here or trying to attract other things here. When we talk about infrastructure and crime, these people are not rejecting Cincinnati to host these big events because we're not cool enough. They're choosing to reject it because our infrastructure is not capable of taking it on. And our crime that we're seeing in the downtown area is not going to be beneficial to these events. And so that's what we have to focus on first.
I know you said city politics and city policies are different than national policies, but they do bleed over. So obviously there's been this, and I've interviewed both the mayor and the police chief about where they stand with ICE and cooperating with ICE.
Okay.
Do you think they're taking the right stance with that?
What was their specific answers they gave you?
If they're asked to, by law, they'll do what's required by the law.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go above and beyond like Sheriff Jones does in Butler County, for example, where he's opening the doors and saying, hey, I'm open for business, so I'm going to work with you. We're ready to drive people to the airport for you.
Yeah.
So they're saying, hey, if you call us and we need to be there, we'll be there. Otherwise, you have your job, we have ours.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Those statements kind of contradict the resolution that they made in 2017. So that resolution stating that we're a sanctuary city and that we're a sanctuary for illegal immigration, which I don't view it as a sanctuary for innocent families or individuals. I see it as it's a sanctuary for criminals and for more crime to happen in our city. But when they made the resolution, they stated that there was going to be further directives toward the law enforcement on how to cooperate or not cooperate with federal agencies. And those directives haven't been put in place. So that, in my opinion, is a perfect example of how our government operates. We want it to look a certain way on the surface, but when it comes down to it, they're saying they're going to abide by the law. And so they're riding the fence with it. Choose one side or the other when it comes to that. But in my opinion, I think that we do need to cooperate, that we need to obey the law when it comes to that. But then at the same time, a lot of these agendas that we're pushing forward as a city, people are more interested in their city government caring about their streets, caring about their crime rates, caring about the local issues that matter.
And then there's the other, the other one that's kind of come down, and obviously the city previously has had pretty strong diversity goals and even some hiring stuff. Would you change that given the pressure that's coming from Washington?
So that's the thing, when it comes to this issue, a lot of times these questions are very vague and broad. It's not discussing like a specific directive or a specific policy. What I tell people when it comes to the diversity of our city, we are a diverse city. And I think that no matter what your background, you don't like that you're falling into potholes. You don't like that there's crime rate going down. So it doesn't matter what community that you think that you're a part of or that you identify with. I believe that city government needs to keep the streets safe, that we need to be able to put infrastructure as a priority. And then when it comes to the diversity of it, everybody has to operate by their own personal convictions. I get that. There's many polarizing things that are happening in our country. But when it comes to city government, we need to keep the main thing the main thing.
I guess what my question is, would you change any existing policies that...
What specific policies?
There are some hiring and some contract policies that are in place.
What specific ones?
Procurement. I can't give you the specific.
So that's what I'm talking about. So as a mayor or as an elected official, we can't just make these broad statements. We've got to be able to look at each policy individually. Yes, I appreciate that we need to be able to have more housing or we need to have more development, but when you looked at like the Hyde Park issue, that was a very specific case where we need to look at that not as a broad thing, but as an individual case where the community does not want that to happen. So in the same way, when it comes to these diversity issues or when it comes to the inclusion policies, we need to be able to look at each one individually and then make the decisions based on that.
Okay. You brought up Hyde Park. If you're elected, would you try to change what the vote was?
Absolutely.
Why?
When you sat in the room and hundreds of people, one by one, and these aren't just like people that have come in for a cause, these are people that are 30, 40, 50-year residents that are outwardly opposing this. And this represents not only just the several hundred in the room, it represents over 4,000 that signed a petition, and it represents an entire community that does not want the rezoning to happen. And so to be able to look in the faces of your people, your constituents, your voters, and to be able to just say no, that we don't agree with what you're saying, then you've lost sight of why you were elected. You know, when a vote is cast for you as an elected official, that's not just a blank check for you to do whatever you want. It's a trust with the voter that you are going to consistently listen to the voices of the voter and you're going to consider what they want, no matter what your personal agenda is.
So, big picture, why should Cincinnatians vote for you for mayor?
Because based on the last 4 years, this is a choice. This is a choice. That's what elected government's about. And the reason why I got into the race to begin with isn't necessarily because I looked at my resume and I said, you know what? I have been born to be mayor of Cincinnati. I've got the track record, I got this. It's the reason why is because at that point there was nothing that was going to oppose the current administration. And so when I got in, I started researching and I started showing that, you know what, based on my background with economics, based on, it's not just the label of J.D. Vance's brother, pastor, and coffee shop owner. Every area of my life I've had to look through from an administrative standpoint, through reading trends of the market. So there are things that we're going to bring to the table that I believe if they vote for me, not only for the primary, May 6th, but for us in November, that we're going to show people that we are going to have a better track record over the next 4 years and 8 years.
As a registered Republican and having the family ties to a very strong Republican in the White House,
Yeah.
how tactically and strategically do you win in such a strong Democratic city?
By showing the people that the issues that they care about are the issues that we care about. And so I really believe that that's what the elected officials need to see, is that, you know, the people have very strong opinions about how you're governing over especially the last 4 years, and you need to start listening to them.
Any last words, any last pitch to the voters?
I would say that if this is airing before the primary, you know, that's giving us an opportunity to be on the November ballot. And so if you're unhappy with your elected officials and how they've governed, then make a statement, go to the polls on May 6th or during early voting and vote for Cory Bowman, just to be able to show that we need change in our city government.